Okay, thank you all for coming. This is a workshop today, and first we'll just call the workshop to order. We have with us today, and the other thing I would just remind everyone, the meeting is recorded, so it'll be posted afterwards, so people, the audience will be able to see and hear us. So we have two guests today, Matt Lehrman and John Little. So you remember the two of them from the series of 5 public outreaches and education sessions that we did on public safety. And they're here today to talk about just kind of, as facilitators, for us to talk about what we aspire to have done within the next 2 years while we're on council, our objectives, the things that we really want to get done, and then to also talk about the civility of just conducting government, how we respect each other, how we respect our constituents, and I think in the end of the day we'll be a stronger council for it, and more professional, and a better product. So I'll just turn it over to Matt.
Actually, Mayor, could I just ask, could we just, so everyone who might be watching this on video, can we just go around, pass the microphone around, and just ask everyone to introduce themselves so everyone knows who is here?
Steve Hatcher.
Mike Johnson.
Cheryl Croyer.
Sheila Amoroso.
Tony Geiger. John Crane.
Vince DeLizio.
And John Little.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So I agree with everything the mayor said except for one, which was the mayor said that we were here to talk. We're not here to talk. We're here to help you talk. Our job is simply to be facilitators. Everything else he said I completely endorse. And I'm going to use my little PowerPoint screens behind me just to help us keep the conversation moving and on target. The most important thing to know about the way John and I work is we're like, and you might have heard me say this in a prior meeting, we're like your tour guides. I'm the tour guide who makes sure that you start on time and get to your destination with all your luggage. John is the tour guide who makes us slow down and appreciate the sights along the way. So I'm the one who's going to keep things moving. But we count on John to make us pause and say, wait a minute, let's talk about it a little bit more deeply. So that's how you should expect us to work with you today. For our purposes, for your purposes today, let's just quickly set some expectations. This is my understanding of what you've asked of us. So if I've got this wrong, you tell me. Today, just like in the individual interviews I conducted with each of you, it's aspirational. We're talking about what you would wish could happen, what you would hope would happen. I asked you about that individually, what your aspirations are. Here we begin to bring some group dynamics, some group discussion to that. You all bring different perspectives to these conversations. This is the place to share those perspectives and to take the time to listen to each other and appreciate the perspectives that you bring to this. And lastly, we're not making any policy decisions today. We're simply talking about the process that you're going to use to take these issues on over the course of your term in office here, but we're not making any final decisions here today at all. I build on this little screen here to say, this is a cyclical process. You're in 2-year, terms now, every 2 years you see new members of your council. So you are at the early stages of this part of the process, and that's what we're really going to focus on now is what do you want to do with just the 7 of you, those of you sitting around this table? What are your priorities together? If and when there's changes to the council, it'll be time to do this conversation again, but we can be that close focused on what we're doing here. And and you've invited this to be a facilitated conversation. So unlike a council meeting where it's your time and this is our time. We get to cut you off. We get to move the conversation forward. We promise to do that respectfully. We want to hear what you have to say, but we're going to keep the conversation focused and moving rapidly. And then lastly, we're not doing any votes today, but John and I are periodically wanting just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. And the simplest way to do that is to say, if on anything we're talking about, if you are 90% or good with it, you don't have to love everything about it, but if in your heart you're 90% or good, you give it a green light. If you're 80% or better, which means you don't necessarily love everything in it, but you could live with it, give it a yellow light. 80% means we're good to go. If it's below 80%, you're allergic, you're opposed, you're offended by something that we're talking about, then by all means, flash a red light and let us know, but just know that when you flash a red light, I'm going to ask you what would you propose in its stead so we can all talk about this. Again, we're not making final decisions. We just want to give a sense of where we are. The last thing I just need to say on this is that for our conversation today, with all due respect, Gary, our town manager, we're kind of putting him on mute for the conversation. His Wait a minute. I was.
We're talking probabilities here.
We're going to find out how good I am. The whole point is that this is his chance to hear what council's direction is. We're not turning to him to say, what do you think? There's plenty of other time to do that. Now it's just for us to have the conversation together. Any questions or comments on that quick setup? Are we green to go?
Question for you. Okay, so this session today is a total of 4 hours. How is it being broken up?
I think if we go 4 hours, you will strangle me. So my expectation. Yeah, my expectation is that if we might be able to go through this in as quick as 2 hours, but anything beyond that, it's by your decision that we're doing okay. If we're spending too long on something, give me one of these things and I'll move us along. And if something is just obviously we've already asked and answered, I'm going to move the conversation forward as expeditiously as possible. I have 8 questions that I'm going to put that I'm prepared to put on the table, but every time we facilitate, it's emergent design. So you will take us off into something that we weren't expecting, or you're going to answer something so fast that we can just move on, and we will stick to your.
But ultimately, this is for you. That's the bottom line. This is for you. It's your time. We'll go as long or as short as need be, okay? We're good.
Okay. Take one of those. Each of you know I interviewed each of you individually. What I'm handing out for you now is the hard copy compilation of all the answers to all the questions that I asked you. Just because this is a public meeting and because it's being videotaped, as we're talking about it, I am not going to assume that everyone who's watching already has seen this, so I'm going to narrate a few of the things that are already here so that no one feels left out of the conversation that we're having. And I realize I'm just handing this to you at the moment. Let me reiterate together what I told each of you individually when I interviewed you. This whole exercise, the interviewing in this conversation, was about collecting individual aspirations for group discussion. And so that's all I did was I asked you what your hopes are, and I wrote those down. The comments as they appear here are paraphrased, and they are shared without attribution. Please, let's not play the game of who do you think said that? That's really fruitless. The point is that we're trying to talk about the ideas here. And if something here is worded inelegantly, you blame me, you don't blame each other, because I took the responsibility to paraphrase all of our conversations. But each of you discovered that in our conversation, I would repeat back to you things that you said, and I would say, well, are you saying this, or are you saying that? And a number of you said, well, you said that better than I said it. I'm not trying to, and this is my third point, John and I are not trying to lead you to any predetermined answer. Gary hasn't asked us, the mayor, no one has asked us to lead you anywhere. My job in the interviews was to make sure that I understood you, and in this conversation, the goal is to make sure that we're all hearing each other right now. With that said, we are going to walk right into the first item on the agenda. The very first question I asked you, and it's on page 1 of that handout, I asked you, before we start talking about visions for the future and opportunities, I asked you what's sacred. That is, what should not be changed? What should be protected or be preserved? And the answers that you gave me are in the bullet points together. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you if we can summarize them together. I think this is a pretty quick exercise. When you read through these, can you identify 1 or 2 or 3 things that stand out where there's general agreement around the table that these are the things that as council members you agree? So I'm just going to read through this very quickly. The things that you said in the interview. Someone said there are 3 things that are sacred: a sustainable water supply, funding fire protection, and conservative financial management. Someone said nothing is sacred. We have to be agile. Someone said the character of our town is sacred. Someone said the trust of our citizens depends on a responsible and sustainable budget. Someone else said we must protect the charm of our town character. And someone said while transparency is vital, council members should honor the privacy of executive sessions and that there's value to being able to have conversations together. I will just make the note on that final point. I will refer that to Gary for a separate conversation somewhere, just as a reminder that there are legal requirements about what can and can't be discussed in executive session. We're not going to try to do that today, but as a separate item, that has to come up separately in your conversations.
And for people that are watching on television perhaps now, when we talk about sacred, it's with a small s. And what it really means is, what are those things that you would lock arms around with each other and say, this is something about Carefree we need to protect. And so that's really what we mean by sacred.
So let's pass the microphone around. And what I'm looking for here is not what you think is sacred, but as you look at these list of 7 things here, where do you think these council members agree that there is something important in this town that should be preserved? And I'm looking for just 1 or 2 or 3 things before we move on to the rest of the conversation.
Sure. I think the one item that stands out most to me is just the overall character of the town, and of course, fiscal management going forward to ensure that we have, sufficient means to cover our responsibilities here for the town.
So fiscal responsibility?
Yes. Sure, Joe.
So I know that character is something that means different things to different people. What's your level of confidence when you say character? Can you give us a little deeper thought on that?
Well, yeah, good point. I'm referencing things of that the architecture, if you will, of the various buildings, the new signage program we have. I don't want to see more roads. I want to try and keep it kind of a small, quaint town, but still has to be modern and financially sufficient, and meet the needs and comforts of our community. I think everybody, as a group, this is an older community, and they have a perception of how they want to live, and that's reflected by where we live. So I think that's why they live here.
We don't have to go around the table. We can go back and forth. Who else wants to just say, what else can we agree on are the things that are small s sacred?
Well, I think in the first bullet point, we're talking about a sustainable water supply. We've spent a lot of time on that, and frankly, I think we've done a good job of hooking up 1/3 of the town to the town's water supply, which was good. We're working on fire protection, which is the second item in this bullet point. And there's a proposition going on the ballot where we're going to ask the voters if they're willing to pay for it through a property tax.
So are you saying that what's sacred here is essential services?
Yes.
Okay.
And a point that was made to me is that we're the second wealthiest town in Arizona. And I really think that we should have the best of everything that we can get.
Who else wants to weigh in on this?
So I agree with you on the first bullet point. The sustainable water supply, the fire protection, and the commitment to fiscal whatever. Thank you. And then to me, the other thing that I would think we would hopefully all agree on is the charm and the character of the town. There's a reason why people moved to Carefree, and it was to live a lifestyle in a small community that's pretty much connected to a large metropolitan area. So we have all the advantages of living in a large metropolitan area, but not living with all the clutter and the traffic and the noise. Yes.
Who else wants to talk about that?
Yeah, so I would have to agree. On point number 1, life safety is critical. So water and emergency services. So we have to sustain those as a town. And if you do that, then you also need financial responsibility and things like that. But being able to deliver the water and manage water assets, which may be being squeezed in the future, it's extremely important. And then be able to protect life and property is a second item.
When we say sustainability, to me, it's beyond just 1 to 5 years. It's sustainable for the next generation and the generation beyond. And we have an opportunity to do things right here. Growing up in inner city Phoenix, I've seen a lot of mistakes on street corners, and we've been very careful as a council, very strategic in how we've proposed development. And I think going forward we need to continue to look ahead 10, 20, 30 years in what we want the town, what as residents the town should be like. So not only sustainability with water, but as a town in that character and preserving that character.
Vince, thank you. So one of the things, as we think about what you just said about multi-generational thinking, we talk about something sacred that needs to be preserved. Has it always been in Carefree multi-generational thinking, trying to make decisions based on next generations, or is that something new that you would like to see strengthened?
I personally don't think so. I think it's been and no offense to anyone at this table, I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way, but it's always come across as it's a community for older folks, people that reach a certain status in their life, and this is where they go to retire, and it's not the case anymore. And in order to sustain as a town, that thinking has to also change, because we need more people that are people that are going to contribute to the economy and continue to work and continue to thrive and raise their kids here, in order to have that vision of 10, 20, 30 years down the road is what we want the town to be.
I would just add that in the past, especially in the distant past, we were just an island up here, and so we were like living in a world where there was no pressure for us to change. But as time has gone on, we have the population centers is moving closer and closer, and traffic moving closer and closer, and all these influences that are like pushing us in directions we might not want to go and changing our character. So I think it's more and more critical than ever, like Vince said, that to be thinking this way. And in the past, we could get away without thinking this way.
Yeah, I think, first of all, Vince made a really good point about the community is changing. The big joke used to be Carefree was a place where old people go to see their parents. And you see who's buying houses in the neighborhoods, and it's not old people going to see their parents. It's younger couples, it's some with kids, and that creates a whole different element and desire for change. So I think we have to be very cognizant of that as we go forward. I do think that the community has done a pretty good job of planning for multi-generations, and I go back where I always end up, I guess, is water, is the people in the late 90s and in the early 80s who were running this town, they had a lot of foresight, and they did some things that set us up to be where we are now. Same thing on fire protection, building a fire station, having our own fire truck. If we go to automatic aid, and that'll be decided by the public, it's not going to be such a huge lift as it might have been if we hadn't been doing the right thing for a long time. The last point I want to make is character of the town. To me, there's really two elements to character of the town, because I don't live that close to the town core. So many of the people that I deal with, they don't care what happens here, because they never come here to the town core. So really, the two elements to character for Carefree is our important town core that for a lot of folks is vital for their daily lives, but really the character of the whole area, open space, no density, and there's pressures for that. We've already had a developer want to come in and put a bunch of apartments on a big chunk of open space. So that's something we're going to have to really hold the line on.
So I think that being fiscally responsible is the foundation of good governance, and if you don't have that, then you don't have anything. It's your foundation. And then we, being a new resident here, we obviously want to keep the character of the town, but I kind of think of us as the gem in the desert. There's nothing like it. Scottsdale is not it. Cave Creek, it has a totally different aura, but we really are, I think, the gem in the desert. And as to what Tony just said, it's really the entire community, not just the town core. But I do think the revitalization is, very, very important in how we manage that.
Retake the microphone. Facilitator's privilege. Sorry. want to make sure that I'm repeating back to you what you said, because I haven't heard any disagreement. I want to make sure that we're on the same page, and then we'll move our conversation forward. Here's what I think you've just said. If anything should be considered sacred, important, should not be changed, it would be these things. The overall character of the town, which is both town core and the whole area in total, fiscal responsibility, a dedication to providing essential services, life-saving services like water and emergency services, and a commitment to long-term sustainability. My question is that a green light for all of you? Is there anything that's missing from that list that you would want to come back to and add that in a future conversation, I'm talking like 6 months from now, that you want to be reminded that these were the things we said. We all generally agreed these are priorities for our community. Is that a pretty good first draft of what that list looks like? Are we green light to move forward? Okay, then since we're green light, we're going to move right to, this is how we do it. We're going to move expeditiously. So, this next place, somebody asked, do all of you have your cell phone handy and an ability to send a text message? I'm going to use some technology then to help us, if you would take out your cell phone for me. Oh. And the way we do this is, I guess I should have advanced my slides while we were doing this conversation. I'm going to ask you to join me so that you can text in answers where all the answers will appear simultaneously on the screen. You do that by texting the word public, P-U-B-L-I-C, to the number 22333. When you text the word public to the number 22333, you will get a bounce back message that says you've joined Matt Lehrman's session. Okay? Let me just know when you get that bounce back message. Send the word public to the number 22333. If you're watching this after the fact, don't try to do it because it will lock you out. But here live, this is going to work for us right now. So I got one. Who else has gotten two? Good. 3. All right. 4. No problem. 5. Sheila, you got it? 6. Did I get everyone? Anyone missing? 22333. Sometimes it helps to put the word in first before you put the number. This is the unintended test to see who's comfortable with their technology. There is no shaming involved here. I do this for groups with 1,200 people at a time. But
Well, just to say, we've got 1, we've got 2 now, we've got 3 connected.
yes, just the word public.
You know, Tony, it's really funny to be the same age as Olden.
Okay, we're good. Very good. So now, to participate, all you have to do is text in a word in answer. Just like you're having a conversation with me, it's very easy from this point forward. I asked you individually to give me some words to describe how you hope members of the council would engage with each other, even if they disagree. And if you turn to the page 2 of your handout, I gave you the compilation of all those words that you told me. Now I'm going to ask you to look at those words, but you're not confined to those words. You can use whatever other vocabulary you want, and I'd like you to text in 3 words that would be your answer to the question. How would you hope members of the council would engage with each other even when they disagree? So you can use the words that are here. You can still use your own words if you want, but as you enter those words, hang on. As you enter those words, I put the list here of for everyone watching at home. You don't have to use these words, but I wanted to remind you of the words that you told me, because what I didn't do here was I didn't say that I didn't say how many times people said those words. So now I'm just asking you here, when you enter a word, it will show up. And in good word cloud format, the more people who say a word, that word will grow in size. You can enter 1 word at a time. You can enter 3 separate words in the same text. It's all the same. However you wish to do it. So, factual is the first word that comes up. Let's see what else comes up. Yeah, sidebar, civil. Remember, it has to be one word. If you put a space between it, it's going to treat that as two separate words. Polite.
I put them in a comma or no comma.
You don't need the comma.
You know?
If you just put a space between it, it'll recognize it as separate words. So, respectful comes up large. Conversation, collaborative, factual, polite. I see minded and I see civil. I'm guessing that someone wrote civil-minded. Is that right? Oh, open-minded. So, yeah. So open and minded became two separate words here. You can try it again if you'd like, and put it together. That way we see it. Respectful, polite. These are the words that are looming large. So these are the words that multiples of you have said. Go ahead. Well, then you can undo it. You can backspace through it. Well, or just leave it. It's fine. We know what you mean.
Verb is interesting.
Yeah. I should have pointed out, you can repeat the same word 3 times. If there was one word that you really cared about, you can say that 3 times, and it will grow in size just by the size of your own vote. That's fine, too. I'm going to pass the microphone around. I'm just curious, as you see the words here, is there anything that stands out to you? What does this mean to you? What's the context? What do you mean when you see respectful and minded or open-minded and thoughtful and polite? What's the significance of that to why those words are here? Who wants to talk about that?
Well, respectful is to, be patient, listen to what our associates have to say, and don't interrupt, and take what they say and share it, give it some thought. It's all important.
I like that you said respectful means don't interrupt, right? So now all of a sudden I have a measure of respectful, and I did that by interrupting you. Sorry.
When I see all those words, I see civil discourse, which is something we don't have a lot at times in this country, and that means the ability to express opinions and disagree agreeably.
I think all of these, and I just put in constructive at the last, lead to constructive dialogue.
I think factual. I don't believe in alternative facts. There's facts that can be documented and measured with data, and I think if we can stick with facts, we'll get to the right answer.
I would just say respectful, because sometimes we engage with people who have different set of facts, and whether they're right or wrong, it's a matter sometimes of opinion, and facts should be in stone, but they're maybe not. It all depends on where they get their facts from and what they're thinking. So if you're respectful, at least you can engage politely and at least leave the conversation in an amicable way.
Blunt carries a couple of different meanings to me. I mean, but the way I see it is that it, rather than dance around and have hurt feelings, to actually have a conversation and directly address what the issue or the disagreement is, obviously in a civil manner, but not beating around the bush, as they say.
So once again, Vince, what are some of the skills that you'd identify with how to be constructively blunt? How do you do that? Because blunt can be offensive, but you're proposing that blunt be assertive. So how would you describe the difference?
I think just asking for additional meaning from the person that maybe doesn't share the same view as you, to ask, to learn more, like Steve had said, to try and find out and do a little bit of fact finding as to why someone believes the way they believe, or they're taking a certain stance on something, so that they can give you that interpretation rather than trying to guess what it could be.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to do one last exercise. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, as a group, that the ability to disagree with each other, that the key word for me is respectful. That we're all going to have different opinions, and we need to listen to each other. And as Michael said, we can agree to disagree, but at least we've all been able to express what's important to us.
So I'm going to ask you to do one more exercise with this. which is I'm going to ask you to vote again on these words 3 more times. Just 3 more words that you get to put down. Again, you can put the same word 3 times if you want, but I don't want you to add any new vocabulary to this. Now I want you to expand on this. The question here is, on the existing words, what's the critical mass here? If I'm going to come back to you in 30 days or in 6 months and you're all going to remind each other, these were the things we said that we were going to do even if we disagreed with each other. I want, what are the words that stand out that you want to be reminded of most of all? So you have 3 more votes here, 3 words to emphasize. Let's see where the critical mass is. I might point out, you're looking for the words that you think represent the totality of the council rather than just your own individual views that you expressed already. What's important from a council's perspective?
Respectful still front and center.
If you're all done, let me know. Are you all done? In a word, you've all said, even if we disagree, what's important to us as a whole is that we remain respectful. And respectful beats out every other word here. That doesn't mean the other things aren't important, and it doesn't mean that the words that didn't make it up here that you responded individually, that doesn't mean that those are unimportant. But as members of a council, you've all created a social contract together to say, if nothing else, we are respectful. Anyone want to comment on this before we leave this part of the conversation?
Not just to ourselves here, but also to our community. Listen to our residents and their feelings and perspectives on things. So that's also, when I put it down, I was thinking all of it, but of course to each other.
Who else? Anyone else?
I think over time, those of us that have worked together in past terms as well have come to respect each other's opinions, and I think that gets reflected in the community as well, because there's always something that's important to somebody, even if we think it's something very minor or a small detail. And it's an issue that gets raised from a resident, constituent, or one of our fellow council members. It is important, and it's important that we treat it that way.
So there are a lot of people in the community that always want government to operate more like a business. And as we all know in business, culture and things that are important are set at the top. And so if you're respectful with each other, that helps establish a culture for the community as well.
Yeah, well, exactly true. So that kind of goes to like leading by example. So if the people see us being respectful to one another, that translates. I mean, if we're up at our council meeting and we're all bickering and fighting, well, it's good chance it's going to carry over to the audience. But at the same time, we have to be respectful to the people in the audience, to the people who engage with us. And it could be, it's as simple as giving them the time to engage, listening to what they have to say, and respectfully responding to them, and being respectful of their opinions anyway, without being derogatory or personal.
Anyone else? I'll take it back. Well, this is the perfect segue then to question number 3. So I'm going to move you forward in your handout to question number 3, in which I asked you, how will the town be different in 5 to 10 years, and what are the implications of that? Well, we're not here today to compare notes on how we think the town will be different. The handout has a number of different perspectives there. I'm going to summarize them very quickly in a moment. But the question that we are going to talk about today is, what's the implications of that? And I'm going to ask you, what are the qualities, John's going to say what are the elements of the town council's governing process that are especially necessary or desirable because we have different perspectives of where the town will be in 5 to 10 years. So in the handout, what each of you said in total was, well, we're already built out, but there's not a lot of change to come. We can polish the car, but it's It's already been painted. But we're going to shift from a baby boomer population to younger families. And once water and fire protection issues are done, the town will be on pretty solid shape with sustainable revenue streams. And someone else says, our new redevelopment plan is going to revitalize the downtown core. And someone says, our population is going to continue to grow in Carefree as people move to Arizona from other states. Someone said the town will be fully built out in 5 to 10 years, but expect turnover and a lowering of the population. And someone said we're going to see benefits of our town vitalization plan with a stronger sense of place in our town center and along with more traffic and economic activity. Those perspectives are all valid. We're not here to debate those. The question on the table now is, given the variety of these expectations, what qualities of the town council's governing process are necessary and desirable? And the reason this is a good segue from the last one was, Councilman, your point that if we're going to be respectful, it's not just among us. It's setting the tone of respectfulness with our community members. So respectful might be the obvious first thing to put on this list. What else would you put on this list? Doesn't have to go to my right every single time. Who else wants to go? What other qualities, what other elements do you want to see in town governance? Okay.
One of the things that I have seen, and I experienced this when I was on the board of condominium complex, is and people don't realize the amount of time, effort, research, professional resources we draw on to get the information, the facts, the data, to ensure that we make as best decisions as we do for various projects we've been involved in. And I think and I'm referencing that's the process. Getting the information, getting good data, getting professional skills to provide more insight to us on these various projects, and try and pull it all together and make it work for the community. And we see the water tank and all the piping systems. That took years to put that all together. Financing, engineering, legal aspects, etc. And I think that's a real compliment to this body, and certainly that of our town manager and the mayor, and how they led that through. And I just think people should take some time and appreciate all that goes in there, because it's not something that's done in 30 days.
What do you think the town needs to do in order so that the public will, understand or appreciate, recognize the amount of work that's going in?
Well, we have a lot of open meetings. For example, as we own it with the fire station exercise, even the exercise we went through with the water tank, we had numerous public meetings. Unfortunately, we didn't have the full engagement of the community, and because of that, there was opportunities for those who had a different agenda to inject their personal views and distort what was really happening, unfortunately. But I think that our residents need to have a better understanding of all the steps that we went through for all these various big projects, and I'm referencing now this more so the water system. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just 30 days. It took a couple of years, and a lot of thought went through it.
Anyone else with a perspective on what else the town can do to get to that place?
Yeah, so first, what Tony mentioned about things that were done with foresight before, which are critical to keep in mind. So the work that was done in the early 2000s on water, fire, those steps that were taken then, even the gardens, right? Foresight and vision made those things happen, and we get to enjoy them today. So now we have a list of things where we want to be in 5 or 10 years. So the way you get there is, respect, fervor, engaging with, but we have to each of us has to engage with the public, not only through open meetings and things, but engage with the public. And I won't say sell it, but at least talk about it. And through that discussion, our goals and our desired outcomes will be modified and changed, evolve. But that's how you make it happen.
I was just going to say, it's taking it to the streets. It's finding a way to personally engage with all of our residents and make sure that they understand what our intent is. The biggest thing right now is with the impending fire decision and automatic aid and the property tax that would go along with that. And so to that end, we're planning, a number of us, of being in the post office and greeting people, trying to answer their questions, because personally this issue is one about education. That if you understand what's at stake, you're probably willing to spend a little extra a year to make sure that you or your loved ones are safe in an emergency. So for me, it's not forcing people to get educated. It's taking it to them, because they probably don't have enough interest to come to us. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I struggle, like Steve was saying, these are complex issues. There's a lot of thought and research and time that goes into them, and it's really hard to translate that to the general public and to get them to want to do a deep dive. They're not going to do a deep dive. And in fact, in some cases, people who are opposed to some of these policies will use sound bites and misinformation to derail what your message is. And you can't take a complex issue and explain it in a sound bite, but you can poke holes in it with a sound bite. So that ties right into what Cheryl said. I struggled with, how do we get people engaged? How do we get them interested? I don't think we can make them be interested. What we can do is it's one foxhole at a time. It's one neighbor, one person, and it's an arduous, long process, but I'm not sure there's any other way to do it.
When we went through our campaigns, and we were going to various homes, we had a pretty good turnout when we would do that, right? 25, 30, 40 people, etc. And we would, introduce ourselves, share some perspectives on things, some of the top issues, and we got a lot of good feedback from those people in that environment. So I wonder if we should perhaps find some volunteers in the community, do something like that again, because it seems like if we can get enough, let's say 5 or 6 meetings of those people, and they can then visit with their friends, maybe we get more information, more accurate information, and support from the community if we literally take it to the streets, as Cheryl was saying. And also, just in closing, I would hope that all of our residents want us to do all the homework that we've done on these various projects, and by doing that, we are showing to them that we are respecting them and their home and the community, making sure we cover all bases, research all the fine points, and that's how we show respect to them.
One of the other elements of the governing process in a lot of communities is trust. And that word didn't come up in the previous exercise, although it was one of the items on the list. Trying to connect with the community and communicate well. If trust is sea level and you're below that, it takes way more energy to get them to even listen. But if you're starting with trust, getting them to understand a complex issue, that's a good place to start from. Does anybody want to talk to the role of trust in the community and the role of trust in the process of governance?
Great question. Sheila?
So I think in order to build trust, we have to follow through with what we say we're going to do. So my kind of mission that I laid out in the kind of descriptor on our town website of what I was going to do was I was going to engage with the community. I was going to be at the post office, and I'm going to do it. So I think just following through on what we say we're going to do and just continue to stick to our messages along the lines of why we think we were somewhat criticized for allowing residents to vote on whether or not they wanted to stick with rural metro or move to a mutual aid program. And so, automatic aid. And so, some of the things that I heard when we were out at the post office, collecting signatures or campaigning for election, were that people didn't know about these things. They didn't get a chance to vote, and all these similar complaints. And really, it was a very small percent of people, but it impressed upon me that we had to increase our community engagement, and I think the post office is kind of the best place to do it. And so we listened to the residents. We found ourselves in a substantially different position with our fire and emergency services backup. We felt it was necessary that people understood that, and we are now giving them the opportunity to have their voice heard. So to me, we're following through on what we said we would do. Now it's criticized, which is fine. People criticize, but I think just continuing to follow through with what we say we're going to do, and it's well laid out. It wasn't, as you were alluding to, it does take a lot of time because we started the PSAC in the first quarter or so of 21, I think.
Take the microphone back. Let me just repeat back what you told me and tell me if I'm missing anything here. I asked you, given a variety of expectations of how the town will be in 5 to 10 years, what qualities or what elements of the town council's governing process are especially necessary or desirable? What you said was respectful where we came from, that we have to be models of good civic dialogue. You said we need to personally engage with the public, and from our conversation, I took that to mean that you, as council members, see a responsibility to personally engage. This wasn't something you're delegating to staff. You're doing this. And third, this follow through on what we're going to do, I would summarize with the word accountability, which is not just doing what you said, but also letting people know that you did what you promised to do. Is there anything missing from that list of the qualities of the governing process that you want to make sure get added here?
I think if we are doing outreach to members of the community, we also need to address the negatives that that are being said directly in terms of there'll be loopholes in the new tax that money can be spent on something else, and outlining what the negatives that are being said are and what the fact is next to it, so that those issues don't have a leg to stand on. Because if we don't address those particulars, they'll always be looming, and all of the naysayers will continue to poke holes with non-factual information.
One other comment. So to build trust, an additional way to do it is not only engaging, but a very strong communication effort. So from the town, so not only from us, but from town hall, and then being transparent. So why are there feelings occasionally of distrust of us? Well, they don't think we're telling them what's going on, and they don't think we're transparent. We may think we are, but they don't. And perception is reality. So we just have to work on that harder and harder.
Quick comment. Yeah, on the trust issue, I think it's critical, and I think this is a nonpartisan body, and we're all volunteers. And we get lumped in with politicians. That's national, state, and that's not us. And so we start with a trust deficit because we're viewed in some corners as politicians. So we have to work doubly hard to undo that.
Well, the one thing I'd say is we engage the public, and I mean this in the right spirit, is we need to steer clear of talking points. And what we need to do is communicate facts. Even if there's pushback, we need to communicate facts, because what I hear and have heard through this whole election process were talking points. And they'll take a talking point and use it to burst whatever we're trying to communicate.
So the way I wrote that in my notes, and tell me if there's a better way to say this, I wrote, stand up for facts. Is that Is there a better way to say that you want to be on the side of facts and not just be on the side of it, you want to defend them, you want to assert advocate for facts?
Yeah, but at the same time, also, acknowledge what is exactly is being said on the other side to dispute what the facts are, and point out that, again, what the fact is, but again, acknowledge the negative, the non-true.
I think part of that is controlling the narrative. And so we have a good idea of what's happening, and we need to make sure that we're out there with the facts. There are always going to be naysayers. There are always going to be people who want to use the sound bites against us. But as long as we are there and we have a clear-cut message and we keep trying to communicate that message over and over, hopefully we'll be at least as effective and maybe more effective than the people without the facts.
So I'm going to try editing my comment here and see if but I don't like the word that I have in the first place, and I could use some help. When I said stand up for facts, your response was no, not just stand up for it. My notes, I wrote uncompromising in support of facts. But uncompromising is a lousy word to use in political settings, right? That we don't want to be uncompromising, but we want to be what? Yeah. Committed advocate. That's an improvement over uncompromising. But the thrust is here, right? So respectful, personally engaging the public, following through on what we're going to do, which is accountability and communication and transparency, and factual. We are, maybe the word is unwavering in support of facts, right? You like unwavering? See, I just need a few extra seconds to get the internal thesaurus working. All right.
I think one of the things that it felt to me like we escaped a little bit, but while we're advocating for facts, or while you're expounding facts and collecting facts and sharing facts, there was a comment made about listening to what other people's facts are, or what they think the facts are. So there's that other piece of being patient enough, instead of just giving people facts, to say, what are your facts? And so there's a listening element that comes with collecting and sharing facts. It's finding out what the opposition believes are facts as well.
In fact, sometimes you're better served to hear them out first before you share all your facts with them.
I literally wrote this sentence on my brand new website this week, and it says, it may test your patience, but it is never a weakness to take the time to listen to someone else with genuine interest. Okay? But it may test your patience. But having heard that, having respected that other people have other information and other perspectives, it then makes it possible to actually have a more constructive conversation. All right. Go ahead. You want to?
Just one additional comment. So respect breeds respect.
Great. So I'm going to ask you green, yellow, red. Again, I'm just looking for the overall sense of you as council members here. Given the variety of expectations, what are the qualities or elements of the governing process that are especially important? These are things to remind you as you have future conversations in coming months. You said respectful. Respect breeds respect. Personally engaging with the public, following through with accountability, communication, and transparency, and being unwavering in support of facts. Are we green light on that? It's okay to not be green. It's okay to be yellow. If there's something missing from this or something that's leaving you at all queasy, you get to say it. This is the place to do it. It's okay to be yellow. With yellow, we still get to move forward, but if we were red, and it's okay to be red in this conversation, that's when John would insist that we slow down and open up and make sure that we're actually having real meaningful communication here. We're not just trying to hit the deadline. We want to make sure we're actually spending our time appropriately. So I'll ask again, are there any reds? Anyone who wants just to say there's something here that's missing or something that's misstated in some way? Do we have the sense? That said, we're going to move our conversation forward. How are we doing so far? Let me ask, we've been at this an hour. We have at least an hour to go. Would you like a kidney break at this moment for 5 minutes? Anyone else want to take a? Let's take a 5-minute. Let's take a 5-minute kidney break. Let's just take a quick 5-minute break. Erica, I'm back on here. Are you good? Thank you. Okay, thanks. And yeah, we did that in under 5 minutes, so everything is working expeditiously today. Let's move on to question number 4. In the interview, when I interviewed you individually, question number 4, sorry, I got to keep remembering to look behind me and hit that. I asked you what was something important or wonderful that the town could or should accomplish over the next 2 to 4 years, or maybe longer. But for purposes of our conversation today, I'm going to just change the question a little bit, because I asked you previously what you would hope we could accomplish. But it's hard to say what you can accomplish, because it's easier and it might be more productive for us to talk about what you want to initiate over the next 2 to 4 years. And so when you answered the question of what would be wonderful to accomplish, I'm going to summarize the answers that you gave me again for everyone watching, but I want you to be thinking about what comes next. Informed by these things that you hope we would accomplish, what is it important that we actually get going off the ground? And previously, when you said, what could we accomplish, you said we have to overcome the reputation that the town isn't business friendly. Having made a commitment to economic development, we need to stay that course and remain diligent. We need to secure the town's destiny. And a lot of that has to do with locking in automatic aid for fire protection. We need to position the town as a destination for tourists and residents valley-wide to come and spend the day. We need to bring space back to life in our downtown where we see there are buildings that are empty, eyesores, and how do we help those owners get good tenants and contribute to the town's economic revitalization? Again, fire protection services or fire emergency services came up. With the water situation being critical, how do we educate residents on water conservation and drought response? And someone said, look at the corner of the Carefree corner at Cave Creek Road and Carefree, and how do we get our share of the commerce, if you will, the sales tax revenue possible from the traffic that's already driving by? If these are the things individually you were thinking we could accomplish, the question comes around the table is, so what do we need to launch? What do we need to initiate now with these 7 members on council? Where do you see a sweet spot or a shared priority that we're not making policy decisions today, but what's the priority that you want to say, this is what we should be working to make happen now? It's always to my right first.
Yeah. Outside of the safety and all with the fire department, I think one of the biggest issues is getting the downtown revitalized, getting the buildings up, make sure everything's up to code, nice architectural designs, and that will attract good tenants. And that is, it's going to take some effort by all of us, and it'll take some time for sure.
And so wait, what does the town need to do? What do we need to do right now to make that happen?
I think maybe getting our economic advisor, Steve, in, and then kind of take an assessment of the town and the state of the buildings and the owners and all the businesses, and just kind of map it all out and see what we can do and work with those various business building owners, and then see what resources are available, state and federal, and of course that would come through Gary, and how we can begin to work with them. And I'm sure, hopefully there's a few legal mechanisms we can use to get people interested, the business owners interested in revitalizing the building that they're in, and see if we can get, it would be nice to get business owners helping other business owners. Maybe that's something we can do through the chamber, and work collectively to build a more attractive community and take us to the next 10, 20 years of Carefree.
So what I'm hearing you say is we got to find ways to energize the economic development in the town core. We don't know
Internally,
exactly what,
yeah.
but we got to energize
We
it.
can't just drive it, a wedge. We got to get the people involved in participating and engaged. That's the only way it's going to work.
Who else wants to add to that or anything else?
Well, I think if I have the terminology correct, we can make it a redevelopment zone. And I know that Steve is currently working on that. He's got a revitalization plan. I don't know if it's been presented to everyone yet, but making it, what did I just call it? The redevelopment area. You can use different tactics with those empty buildings and with those owners to make it attractive to them and to us, so that we get better businesses and we fill up some of those eyesores, really.
I think we've already started the first stage, which is putting together the redevelopment plan and laying out the process, kind of the beginning processes of how we're going to achieve that over a very long time. But I think the foundation is met in the sense that the plan identifies the issues such as empty buildings, and we could use some facade upgrades. And some people complain that there's just kind of a mishmash, and so the question is, should we celebrate the mishmash or should we try to make everything look the same. I mean, that's something that community involvement, I think, is very important. That will help to determine that. But I do think we have the foundation to start the process, like I said, identifying the issues and then giving us kind of the toolkit and ideas of how to deal with them. And so that, I think we've got the first stage for that right now.
Yeah, just to go further, so we've done the redevelopment zone. We have it. We have all the tools in our toolbox. We have a laundry list of projects for enhancement. So I think the steps that I would like to see us take in the next 2 to 4 years, one is put in some firm design review guidelines for the core, the redevelopment zone. We don't have those. We've talked about them, but that's something that's going to have to be driven through, I think, planning and zoning and Stacy Bridges' department, Denzek's department, and a lot of public input. So that would be one thing that we could get. The other thing is we have this giant laundry list in our redevelopment plan of projects that are identified. Some would be required of business owners, some potentially of the town, whether it's streets, signs, whatever. And I think in our budgets, coming budgets over the next 2-4 years, we will have the opportunity to say, okay, we've got an extra X dollars. Let's prioritize what we think we want to get done first, and let's knock those off the list. So that's something that would be wonderful for the town to do in the next 2 to 4 years. Another thing is back to the old water. We're not done with water. We'll never be done with water because it's going to be an ongoing moving target. We don't know what is going to happen with Lake Mead. We don't know what the cuts are going to be on CAP. So we're in a position where how do we make decisions on future growth or future projects when we don't know what we're dealing with? So I don't know how we develop those tools to give us more flexibility. Maybe it's through the general plan and the water amendment of the general plan, but somewheres we've got to get our hands around how do we control what's left of the growth here relative to water. And the other piece of that is what future projects can we do to enhance our resources. And the one that jumps to mind is we've joined the SRP study on the raising of Bartlett Dam. We need to stay with that, and when that study concludes, hopefully with them going forward, we have to find a way to get a piece of the pie there. We're not members of SRP, but we'll have the opportunity to make the case to get an allotment. And we're a rounding error in all this. So a little tiny allotment for Carefree would go a long way to securing our water future. And the other thing I think about is if they do that project, they are going to destroy our roads. They're going to have dump trucks, cement trucks. It's going to brutalize our roads. Is there anything we can do there? It would be wonderful not to be stuck with a $10 million road repair bill.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts here. One is important and one is wonderful. So I think it would be wonderful if the town core was revitalized. I mean, it's a matter of civic pride. Of course, there's an economic engine in terms of revenue to the town. And that would be, it takes the efforts and things we just talked about. And the other part is, of course, the important. The important is water. And part of what Matt had said is how do you get there? Well, you get there in part with the things that Tony talked about, but you get there also through education. It is continuous education of the public because the water segment will impact every citizen. The economic well-being of the town core will not. And it'll just go to lifestyle and quality of life. So how do you get there? Well, education, and then how do we manage our water company, our rate structure, so we can change behavior, and then, of course, being able to augment our supply and make it as strong and healthy as possible.
So one of the questions that comes to mind when you talk about economic revitalization, especially in the downtown core, is sometimes the businesses will look at you and say, get busy, revitalize us. And sometimes government says, well, wait, this is a private sector initiative. You know, that's where the energy ought to come from. So my simple question is, how confident are you that the roles are clear about who's supposed to drive, who's supposed to lead?
personally, my personal preference is that the private sector drive it. The reality of it is, I think it's going to take leadership from the town, whether that's staff or council members, to set an environment and help lead people, lead the horse to the water. And that doesn't mean throwing millions of dollars at private businesses and properties. I'm not for that. But I do think we can selectively help prime the pump, whether it's just helping them educate, getting them information, helping draw new tenants, all the tools that Gary and his team have. His redevelopment district gives us more tools. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to lead to get the result we want.
I just want to make sure that we don't forget about the northeast corner of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. There's a huge amount of commerce out there, and there's a huge amount of traffic. It's only going to get bigger and heavier, and our corner isn't picking up its fair share of the commerce that's happening there. So, I mean, you can't drag businesses there, but we have to find a way to get larger businesses that can generate the tax dollars that will go a long way towards making sure we have the water supply and infrastructure that we need and the fire safety.
Well, along with that corner, I believe the reason, or the biggest reason it was never developed, because there was no water access on that corner. No water, nobody's going to build. So a lot of what was planned there ended up being built across the street down Carefree Highway. One of the things that didn't happen was that hospital that they were hoping to be able to build on that property. I would encourage us to think Trader Joe's, Sprouts, not Costco's. I would encourage us to think drive-through banks, dry cleaners, not McDonald's, unless it's a high-end place. In other words, it's one of our last pieces of land to develop, and we should think very wisely about what we put there. We spent a lot of time in 2018 putting an ordinance in place that governs what can and can't be built there. And so I'd encourage us to try and stay within that ordinance as people make presentations. One thing I'll go out on a limb I'm not in favor for is a lot of high-density building on that property and rentals, because, as you know, the state legislature is considering eliminating the tax on rentals. And if we went on a limb and we allowed that to be built and they pulled the tax, wow.
I'm going to summarize the things that I've heard you say, and tell me if I've missed anything or if there's anything you want to add to this. I asked you what's something important or wonderful that the town could or should initiate over the next 2 to 4 years. And you said, we need to be supportive in energizing the supportive in energizing economic development in the town core. You said we should create some firm design review guidelines and get behind whether we're celebrating differences or trying to coordinate differences, and that we need to get proactive in terms of securing our water future. The manner of that I'm going to leave out of this because that's the how, and I was trying to go for what's the what that you're trying to get here. Is there anything other than those or in addition to those that you want to make sure we get added to the list? Again, I'm looking for, as a council, what are you saying are the priorities? Because remember, your town manager is listening to this, and so taking cues to say, is there any other agendas that you want to make sure that the town manager is bringing to you and keeping up with your expectations?
I would like to see some of our anchor tenants in our town core step forward and promote more activities commerce-wise in our town, whether it be our friends at the Hilton here with a marketing budget to have some activities that can promote bringing, either helping to beautify our town core or different events, smaller scale events, to get more people up here to more or less kick the tires on our town and take a look around. So, as well as some of the other tenants as well, but the biggest one right here.
So, Matt, there were a couple of mentions of leadership. Whether or not, something that needs to be accomplished is to see if you could spark leadership in the business community or in those areas where you need to take leadership to develop a plan and a strategy to lead. And that's what I think I heard.
Anyone else want to comment on that? Are we missing anything from this list? Anything? Yeah, sure.
So on that topic, I think we're very fortunate right now. We have a handful of businesses who are passionate about the town, and I haven't seen it like that in a long time. And so it's incumbent upon us to foster that spark and do what we can within the means and the assets that we have to move that forward. And that'll pay dividends because it'll just, if we can do that, it'll just carry on and build upon itself and hopefully allow us to step back and then it'll just run.
I've been on council for, 4 years now. And we've always engaged as best as we could and discussed our concerns about getting information to our residents and so forth. But I don't think I've ever had, other than Chamber of Commerce, and a lot of direct interface with the business owners. I'm sure I know Steve does, and Gary, but as a body, I don't recall doing that on a systematic time frame. I think we should do something like that.
Well, first of all, I think that not just Steve is out there, but Erica is out there, and they're visiting our businesses all the time. John is out there an awful lot. And we have had town business breakfasts in the past, and I think we're getting ready to start doing those again. We don't get a lot of participation, but at least they know that we're willing to talk and listen and buy them a cup of coffee. So, I think we try to stay as engaged as we can. And then the only thing I think that we're missing is that discussion on the northeast corner.
Yeah, so in the northeast corner, going to what Mike said, the key is to honor the commitments that we made to the residents around there, and then to, as best we can, encourage tenants or anchors and little stores around it that bring value to our citizens. And that's really maybe a stretch, but in an ideal world, a wonderful outcome, revenue, something that the people who live there, who sucked it up to allow this to be constructed there eventually, can just walk and get value and enjoyment out of it, as opposed to something which is kind of like an industrial retail place.
I guess what I was trying to say politely was no Costco's. We do have a Lowe's across the street. They won't locate there.
All right, and no $1.50 hot dogs for you. That's it.
Oh, the good ones.
The good ones, yeah, the good ones. So I'm just going to repeat back. I want to make sure we are green to go on this. Green and yellow allows us to move forward. Red means we should slow down and continue this conversation. So I'm looking for your color. Something important or wonderful we should initiate over the next 2 to 4 years. Be supportive in energizing our economic development zone in the core. Get a firm design review guidelines. Dealing with water, being proactive with securing our water future, sparking leadership in the business community in support of these aims, and activating whatever the word would be for the northeast corner, which includes honoring commitments to neighbors and bringing value to our citizens. Are we missing anything from this list, or are we green to go? Yeah.
But I would just say, we have these business meetings, and it's amazing if any of us go, how much folks appreciate us going, whether we even contribute. The fact that we just sit there and show enough interest to attend for an hour at 5 p.m. Really means something. And so it's almost like passive leadership maybe, but it's a good thing to do.
A couple of them for dinner, they would open up, something like that.
Mayor says he sure would be happy for that. So let me push our conversation forward, because what you just did, Mayor, was exactly take us to the next question that I was going to ask you. So the next question is, how can we individually, I mean you as council members, how can we individually leave the town council's governing process even stronger over the next 2 to 4 years? Please understand, in the nature of my question, I have not said that it was weak to begin with. I said even stronger. I'm assuming that we are already in a place of strength. Even stronger. So, but the point here was, how do we do this individually? So this is not a council action. This is, what do each of you do? What do you contribute to make this happen? And I think the ideal way to do this is, let me ask you to take out your phones again, because we're going to talk about this a bit, and you don't have to text in right now, but you're not limited to just one word. You can type an entire sentence if you want, and the system is going to list all of those sentences, and it's going to put them on a loop so we can see them. And as we're having this conversation, I would just encourage you, keep adding to this. Let's get as many things. But I'm asking you, what can you do? What can you contribute to make the town's governing process even stronger? Not everyone has to do exactly the same things, but all of us have the opportunity to contribute to making the town's process stronger. Take a minute, think about it, and then we'll talk about the kind of things that you put down there. Sorry? You can type an entire, the same text string, yes. But now you can do an entire sentence. It'll all string together. So constant conversations with community members. Spend time at the post office talking to citizens. Actively seek out and engage citizens and businesses. Pound the pavement and meet and greet. Meeting with HOAs regularly. Presentations to HOA groups on important town issues. There's a lot in here already about kind of taking it to the streets. I think that was the term someone used earlier. Can we just talk about that a bit more? Like, in your experience, what's been effective? What's been productive or meaningful? What about that works, and what should we learn from your experience there?
I think the thing that accomplishes that the most is being at the post office and talking, because we don't have mail delivery. Just about everybody has to come to the post office at some time or another to get their mail. And when we're there, they can ask us questions, we can answer their questions, and we can just start conversations. And I think they really appreciate it. There are very few times when people go, "Oh, I don't have time. I don't want to talk to you." Most of the time, they're pretty open about it. We get a lot of people stopping and talking to us, and so I think that's one of the best ways to engage with our residents and let them feel like we're open to their comments and their feelings.
And I think the more we do it, the more people will talk to us, because we have had the, oh, I'm too busy, or I'm on my way here, or when we were out there before the election, I've already voted, but we're actually there to talk about fire and emergency meetings. But I think the more we do it, like I said, or alluded to earlier, the more people who will feel comfortable just sharing a question or concern, and then that's how we can build the momentum from the ground up.
I agree with all that, and it works for 2/3 of the town. But the other third of the town does get mail home delivery, and that's the third of the town that doesn't care about, a lot of them don't care about the town core, because they're not part of it. So that requires a different approach, and that's probably where I found the HOA approach is pretty effective way to get them. And if there's council members within a particular neighborhood, that's always nice that they engage with their neighbors and kind of get people that want to be involved. The other thing is, I hand out my business card, much to my chagrin at times, when I'm out in front of the post office, and I do get calls. And sometimes those calls are not something I can actually do, but I might be able to put them in a direction. At least I'm listening. At least they feel like government isn't faceless or doesn't care, because there's 3,800 citizens in this town, and there's 2,200 voters. So with 7 of us, it really isn't that daunting of a task over the course of a couple years to reach everybody.
Yeah, the only other venue I've suggested we could spend some time at or get more visibility is when there's events in town. So, we got Thunderbirds here, so you spend an afternoon walking around, or you man a gate so like everyone has to see who's coming through that gate. Or what else do we have? Farmers market. Just walk around, do things. Go to a garden seminar. Anything to get face time, because it's amazing how many people know who you are and you don't know who they are. And they'll come up to you, and you can just engage with them, talk, and you'll learn something. They'll talk to you, and it'll be more pleasant than you realize.
I'm curious how you deal with the conversation you had earlier about dealing with people with misinformation or quote-unquote alternative facts. You said you wanted to be unwavering in your support of facts. How does that get reflected here? What do you do individually to be unwavering in support of facts?
Well, you have to know the facts, and you have to do the homework that got you to the facts. So you can talk, not only spew out the facts, but you can engage in a discussion so you can defend them. So it takes homework, it takes reading things. For me, it takes reading things more than once until it sinks in, and then that's how you can pull that off.
Yeah, I have found, having had some of those conversations out in the post office, you have to feel your way through it. You run into some folks that they're not interested in anything you have to say. They've already decided they're hostile, they're angry, and you just got to let them go, because you're just gonna get into a thing you don't want to get into. There are some that come out hard, and then you say no, but what about A, B, and C? And they go, oh, I didn't know that. And then you start a dialogue, and then you start breaking them down, and then you win them over. So that's to my point. It's really foxhole by foxhole. If you go with somebody that's just dug in on a position, even if it's not based in reality, you're not going to win them over. And then you're going to have all these people looking at you while you're in this heated debate with someone, and you've lost the day.
Well, I think another avenue of communication, and most of the council members were very effective, is we wrote a lot of letters. And I went to the local publication, and I had people come up to me and talk about the letters that had been written, and I thought we got a lot of attention with them because there was so many things written that were just not true or factually incorrect, and we spent a lot of time writing those letters and trying to dispel that stuff.
So let me suggest, again, you take another minute and think about the answers to this question, and what you just said, make sure that it's reflected up here. Taking time to write letters, taking time to study, and taking time to practice how we have conversations with people who are going to challenge us on these things. Those are all really important points. Those are things that you all can do individually, and they should be reflected on this list. So take a moment and just make sure that this list is as thorough as the conversation that you just had. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds or so just to add something else to this list. know the facts, be accountable to them, letters to the editors and HOAs. It all comes back to respect other opinions and patiently try to educate. Be visible live and in media.
So there's something I think Sheila said earlier that speaks directly to this. If I could reach back and extract something you said, because I think it's so appropriate to this question, and that is, if you say something, follow through and do it. Make your word. And when you're out there, and when you're pounding the pavement, and you're in front of the post office, you're making yourself vulnerable because you're going to say things, and you're going to have to be accountable for that, and they'll remember that. So, as you work individually to contribute to make the governing process even stronger, I think it speaks directly to your point, which is make sure there's no gaps between what you say and what you do. That's such a powerful thing. So I thank you for that.
I used to have a name badge that said, hello, my name is, the little stickers, but it said, hello, my name is accountable. Because I wanted people to know that they could trust me to follow through. That's the message that you're giving. Not a bad sticker. Got to go find that for you. This is the one where I'm not going to ask you red, yellow, green as a whole, because there is no whole on this. This was what can each of you contribute individually on your own. But what I think is powerful here is in this conversation, you've all acknowledged that you all can contribute something. You contribute from your own talents and knowledge and experience and perspective and all of that. And it doesn't have to be the same thing that you all contribute, but you are contributing to the whole, and your contributions build accountability, build education, build trust. Anything else that you want to talk about this before we move on? Vince, you look like you got something.
I think it's. Well, no, I think it's. Thanks. I think it's a consensus. I mean, it's outreach. That's the statement that we are all making. Even some of us at times may get a little gun shy to do that, particularly around election time when you're standing in front of the post office and you're being approached by hostile. Anyway. But yeah, I think that's the common theme that is being written there, in that we've got to get out there and do more outreach, is what it comes down to.
Anyone else want to talk about this before we move on? All right. Was it good? Did I say something good? My watch records me all the time. I get it. All right, I'll move us forward. Here comes a question. By the way, thank you for this. This was an important one, and you spent some good quality time on this. And I think your insights here are really incredibly valuable. So congrats to you on that. Here comes number 6. In the individual interviews, I asked each of you, what do you see as obvious or likely points of philosophical disagreement among council members? And I was very clear to say I'm looking for what the roots might be of disagreement. I wasn't looking for who would disagree with each other. I'm going to summarize the answers that came up here, but they were largely the same. And at the end of this, I'm just going to ask you the implications of the facts, the implications that these answers were largely the same. Your answers were, everybody on council seems to have the town's best interests at heart. We just have different perspectives through which we see it. It's not so much philosophical disagreements we face, so much as remembering that we're at different stages of life and different perspectives. Someone said nothing comes to mind as being obvious philosophical disagreements. There are no obvious points of disagreement within the council, but there are within our community disruptors, and they vehemently protest. And this person said, I don't even understand where they're coming from. I don't understand that ever contrarian position. Someone said there's a likely difference of opinion about the role of public-private partnerships in downtown redevelopment. And someone said, we're actually a pretty homogenous group. We play well together, but there are recurring neighborhood tensions that we recognize in our community. I want to ask you about the implication. We want to ask you about the implications of this. Believe me, we're not trying to instill disagreement. We're not saying that. But if you, by and large, tend to agree, you've been through a vigorous process of deliberation, you've had staff look at things, and you've done the homework and you've looked at this. If at the end of all that, you still pass something with a 7-0 vote, what's the implication of that, and what do you need to be mindful of as a result? Sheila.
I'm not exactly answering your question, but I think that if we were Scottsdale, that question would be a much different answer, because we are a small town providing the very basic level of services, core services. So we're not discussing whether or not we should spend money on this social program or that social program or this other social program. We're really trying to make sure that we can provide the core municipal services that are necessary for a small town. So when you philosophical different, that's such a broad statement to me, in the sense that we all, like someone said, we all want have the town's best interests at heart, which I believe we do. We all have different life experiences and careers, which brings a different perspective in. But I don't think we're so philosophically different that it creates, I don't want to say tension. Tension can be good, but it just creates this opposition, if you will, that discord that we just don't have that. Oh yeah, sorry, I was passing it off.
Okay. So I think the last part of your question was when we have votes and they come up 7-0, which happens 99.9% of the time. And I think that people can discern that we don't think for ourselves, that we just rubber stamp everything. And I think what it really means is that once we've all done our homework and once we've all looked at the issues from our own perspective, that we agree. And to Sheila's point, we're a small town. We don't have a lot of big, complicated social issues to think about. We just want to make sure that we provide all the basic necessary services. And we want to make sure that people feel like they have a voice and that the town listens. And I think from that perspective, there aren't that many chances to disagree. I think that when we do have a problem, we usually go into town hall. We will talk to each other individually. We will talk to the town administrator and get some background and some perspective that maybe we didn't know about. And then when we get together, we've all kind of gotten to the same place. So I don't think it means that we're rubber stamping things, that we're not thinking for ourselves, that we're taking the easy way out. I think that we've done all the work and we just happen to agree on the decisions that we're making.
I think it's more, I agree with everything you just said, and I think it's even more simplistic than that. There's just not that much to disagree about. I mean, there's a few basic issues: water, fire, police. There's 3 empty parcels in town to build on. It's not like we're having multiple zoning cases that we want to put apartments on these 4 corners. There's not the social issues. So to me, it's basic blocking and tackling of running a small town. And when you boil down these issues, a lot of the answers are pretty self-evident if you understand basic public finance, basic municipal management. It's it's not everybody just rubber stamping it.
Well, and I think that our staff and our council are pretty well in lockstep that things aren't going to end up as discussions or agenda items that are completely off the wall that we have to object to. I mean, it's the operation of the town. They're items that we believe in, we do our homework on, and we're not going to disagree for the sake of disagreeing to make a statement. We if we do disagree, we have a reason for doing so that could be because we view it as detrimental to our town's operations. But again, they're items that are appearing on the agenda that are not off the wall.
Well, looking into the future, there are some things facing us, and not projecting, but if we're talking about philosophical disagreement, the only areas that I may see as we go forward is economic redevelopment and how far we want to go in terms of pushing the merchants and the property owners, etc. I know we've had some discussion about the use of eminent domain. We've only used it once. And whether or not we want to be in the development business, those types of things. Again, I'm not projecting, I'm just making a statement, but we are headed in that direction.
Yeah, so often we come down 7-0, and I think the key is how do you get there? So what you talked about, doing your homework, going to town hall, sorting out the facts, but also when we're up there and the issues before us, engaging in a discussion, not discussing things for the sake of just saying stuff, but asking good questions, whoever's before us, and amongst ourselves. And I think we've actually done a really good job of that in the last, at least on my watch. We've done very, very well, and we should continue to do that because it shows the public that we have an active, engaged council. And you may get to the same place, it may be 7-0, but at least it conveys a sense of how you got there.
For you on this. John and I have this interesting perspective because we did get to do the public sessions for just the exploration of the automatic aid shift. And there's something that you didn't say, but I think John and I would observe from our experience is that it's not enough just to make good decisions. Like my math teacher in high school would say, you have to show your work. You have to show the effort that was put into this. And from our perspective, when we came in to do those public discussions, the fact that you even had public input discussions was itself a big thing. But we were on the shoulders of you had a year or two of citizen engagement and work had been put into researching this question ahead of that. Showing your work is that you weren't just looking at a report that staff issued you and voted 7-0 off of it. The work was there were months, there was process, there was time invested to get this to a place where council could consider it. So I just ask you, how do you routinely show your work? How do people know that when you're voting 7-0, how do they know how much went behind the scenes?
They don't. We go in and ask questions behind the scenes. We're not a council of grandstanders anymore. We actually go in and we quietly go about our business. We educate ourselves. We ask questions. I'll ask the guy in the back over there that signs checks, and what do you think? And I'll get his assessment, his opinion, and I'll do more research, and then I'll ask my other fellow council members and the mayor here, and that's what we do. And we're not a loud bunch, a grandstanding bunch. We just make our decisions for our own, and they happen to align with the rest of us, and that's why it works. We don't yell, we don't argue like other towns do, and that's why it works.
So the way Matt's written this here is, what are the implications of that, though? Are there implications of that where you're completely competent and capable of making good quality decisions because you do your homework, you read things, you talk to people, you come, you deliberate. But if I'm sitting at home watching it on television and I don't know what the background is on a particular issue, Matt's question again, how do you communicate that you've done your due diligence?
I get emails. We get emails about different things to follow up for the residents that are concerned, that care. We get emails from them. I mean, that's or phone calls, or we'll see them out and about, and we'll get questions, and we address them. And you voted for me, so you know me, you know my character. It wasn't just checking a box on a ballot. So you already know that, but you can always pick up the phone and find out more if needed.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between grandstanding and letting people know you've done things. If you overstep it, you might look kind of ridiculous. But if it's just to remind people subtly that you've done something. And so I'll go back to my days in planning and zoning, where if someone came to us, there was always a nice way to say, you actually looked at the lot, right? A subtle statement, and you've conveyed to the applicant that you were there, and it's all of a sudden there's more credibility, there's less likely to be a misstatement or something. And I think the same applies up here. A subtle conveyance of what we have done or what you have done or what the town has done will get you there without grandstanding.
Yeah, I think it's a gap for us because I don't think I think there are some folks in town that just think, oh, you guys are just a rubber stamp. And I don't know how to communicate to them that we've done the work. And the example is we spent hours and hours in front of the post office handing out flyers for the fire meetings. Nobody came. And people are just not that interested until it's personal to them or it's already happened and they don't like it. And I think there's also a group of people that trust us and feel like they know we're doing the right things and they see the results of what's going on. So I don't know how we do that.
Well, we keep doing what we're doing. I mean, to give you a couple of examples, we had designs for the hotel laid out over Gary's table for a year that we went through, and people could have come in and looked at them, different designs. And then likewise, the day that we voted to spend $2 million to put a water tank in, there were two people in the audience aside from the water board, him and Tom Cross. I remember that. And we voted on that, and sure enough, next meeting, there were people objecting, but they didn't come that time. And that was public.
Anyone else on this? So look, John and I are not here to push something beyond what you all are comfortable with. So we're happy to leave it at this. I'm just going to repeat back to you what you said. The implications of likely points of philosophical disagreement, the implications you said was there's not that many chances to disagree. There's not that much to disagree about. We're focused on core services necessary for a small town. It's just not our nature, and we don't want to do anything that looks like grandstanding. Okay? Yeah, of course. There's not that many chances to disagree. There's not that much to disagree about. We're doing core services necessary for a small town. It's just not our nature to brag about ourselves or whatever, and we don't do grandstanding here.
Anymore.
So there are in fact things to disagree about because we have people who disagree with us. So there certainly are things to disagree about, and we just don't happen to maybe amongst ourselves sometimes. But to say there aren't is incorrect.
Yeah, I would just say if a couple other people got elected, you might see more disagreement. Yeah, I'm not sure it would be fact-based, but it would be disagreement.
I agree with everything you said. The only thing I'd emphasize is the future's ahead of us, and we have some serious challenges to work through.
Well, so if nothing else, I'm going to risk putting words in John's mouth because he's the deep thinker in this relationship. This might just be a seed that we just plant for you, which is maybe this is worth a little bit of insomnia to think about what could we as council members do to better demonstrate the quality, the quantity of due diligence that we're putting in, so that we're not just reacting to people who call up who are questioning it, that we're actually demonstrating it better up front or conveying it up front. We're not saying that you have to, but it's worth thinking about. You want to add anything to that?
No, that's well said. I think it's just you don't want to make work. You don't want to appear to be contriving things just to do something. But I think there might be worthwhile just to think about a qualitative things that you might consider to demonstrate how much due diligence you do, how much work goes into the job, how dedicated of a group this is, and how much you all care. You know, there's no easy answer to that. I think it maybe goes back to the reason we asked the question, what can you do individually? And earlier somebody had said, you do this one person at a time. You and everyone you meet, when you have a chance to do something, you do it. And so I carry that forward from the very earliest part of the meeting.
Gary spent a lot of time at the fire meetings explaining the due diligence that we did do. So, and even at the final town council meeting, he did the same thing. He talked about the evolution of how we got to where we are. So I think he did an excellent job of doing that.
So, and I will point out, you're members of the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. Gary's in connection with plenty of other cities and towns around the state. I deal with a lot of cities and towns around the country. You know, you don't have to invent this from scratch. It might be an interesting question to ask other cities and towns, how do you show your work? How do you do that so you don't look like you're grandstanding? And, you know, we'll put that on the agenda. Not off the top of my head, but I tell you that I just started a monthly free Zoom gathering. On Monday of this week, I had 21 council members, mayors, and city and town managers from all over the country, from Alaska to South Carolina to Arizona, and we just all hopped on Zoom together for an hour and had a conversation about a particular topic that I was losing sleep over. This might be a very interesting topic: is how do you show your work? And I'm happy to put that on my agenda for next month and invite you all to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Without advertising your vote. In other words, you can't advertise your vote.
Right. Yeah. Without making yourself looking self-good, right? Self-good, whatever that is.
So there's also, there's just little practical things that maybe from time to time, when you ask if we have some personal experience with it, would be there are a lot of citizens who are suspicious sometimes of the bidding process or who gets contracts. Is it going to friends? Is it going to somebody because you know somebody on the council or something? And even though there might be a really easy slam dunk consent item on awarding a contract, sometimes it's okay to just say, why don't we pull that one so we can take an opportunity to describe for people the process we go through when we make decisions about awarding contracts. Just a little a moment to educate rather than to pull it for some reason, but just to educate people that we don't do this just automatically. We actually have a process, and we have standards, and we have criteria, and here's how we do it. I don't know, it's just a thought.
I'll move our conversation forward if you like. So there's 2 questions left on the agenda. I'm going to tell you what the last question is, and then we'll go backwards. The last question is, anything else? So just so you know, that'll be the last question we'll ask. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we talk about today that we haven't yet? Before I get to that question, my second to last question, what I've learned is the penultimate question. I love that word, and I'm using it correctly. The second to last question is, when I interviewed you, I asked you, what are we over? That is, how do we reclaim limited capacity and attention and say that we'll stop doing something in order to create capacity to do something else? I don't want to have a conversation about that today. It was enough that you identified them and they're in the sheets. That's fine. The conversation that's worth having is kind of informed by that is above and beyond the responsibilities that come your way because the town process requires that you look at an application or consider a thing that's on the agenda or whatever. There's a calendar for it. Beyond the things essentially that Gary comes to you and says these are the responsibilities, you have to look at this. Beyond that, what should the town council take the initiative to address? That is, based on all the conversation we've had today, where would you like to be able to say as a council, Gary, we want you to bring this to the front burner. We want you to make sure that we get to address this question because this is important to us. It may not be on the regular calendar of agenda, but you all want to make sure that you are asserting the right as a council to say this is a topic that we want to address. What would you put on that list? Tony? You made an expression like, can I? This is my question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, this is my question 7. Sorry, which is above and beyond the responsibilities that come our way. What should the town council take the initiative to address? What do you take the initiative to? Because other stuff is going to come to you. The budget's going to come to you regardless. What else beyond the stuff that's already coming to you do you want to focus on? You got the mic right there. Thank you. No, go ahead. Anyone else want to? Let's marinate in the question for a second.
Well, I got one. I guess you want a little controversy or a little spice. We use a lot of consultants, and there's a good reason for that in many areas. But there's also been some comments that maybe we use too many consultants, and I don't know the right answer there. But maybe we need to take a look to make sure how are we going about determining that? Is there times when yes, staff is busy and they would have to give up what they're doing day to day to work on this project, but maybe that's more important. It'd be better if it was a staff person. I'm not making the judgment, I'm just asking the question, and I think it would maybe help us if we did a little more, took a harder look at that.
Also, and I don't know the answer, but we always talk about we're running lean. Are we too lean? Do we need more help in Gary's office? I think it's a legitimate question.
I think that we have a very well-seasoned, very competent staff, and I feel so lucky for that. We have needs that I personally like to have on these important issues consultants who in their entire life's work is this specialization. And so we don't have staff that have that capacity or their entire life's work as a consultant in this one area. So to me, and larger towns use consultants as well. It's not just smaller towns because we do have limited staff. But to me, I like the real experts to be able to guide us through some of these more complex processes. And because no one knows everything about everything, but it also is nice to have an independent entity provide an independent, process that, if people are skeptical, then we have an independent expert that is providing guidance.
Do we try to poll our own citizens to create more citizen-led boards based on their areas of expertise and where they work, what type of work they did professionally, which serves a couple benefits. Number one, it would save us on the actual cost of consultants if we have people that specialize in certain areas. And secondly, it gives our residents more of a stake and perhaps even a pathway to more public service in the community.
Yeah, I would just say we saw that in the Public Safety Advisory Committee, right? So we drove from the citizens, we got all kinds of expertise on there, generated a great product. And to what Vince is talking about, so if we just look at planning and zoning, right? We put out a call for candidates. We got 17 to fill 7 spots. So there's a real hunger out there to participate. When you look at those resumes, we have a very talented pool of people to draw from, all kinds of incredible expertise and experience. So if we can bring people in, I hope that'll always eliminate the need for a consultant for specific expertise. But what it will do is it'll get us on a path, and it will create a greater pool of citizens who are part of the solution.
Yeah, I think the Fire Safety Emergency Service Committee was a perfect example. They got the answer. They got the right answer. Yes, it was the right thing to bring in Jim Rounds, a financial consultant, and really validate that with another set of eyes. But at the end of the day, we had some serious public finance expertise on our citizen committee, and they got the right answer. So maybe there's a blend. I do agree with John. More citizen involvement is better, and getting more people engaged. We have some incredibly talented folks. I mean, reading the resumes on this P&Z applicants, it was impressive, really impressive.
I'm going to repeat back the two things that I just heard you said. Above and beyond the responsibilities that come our way, what should the town council take the initiative to address? Again, I'm paraphrasing your words here, but you said we'd like to get confidence that we are running our staff appropriately lean. Please notice I left out the use of consultants because that kind of hits close to home for me. But in about 10 minutes, apparently. But the confidence that we are running appropriately lean, does that at least get to the place where what you're questioning here? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Mike's question was, do we have enough staff? And if we had a couple more, would we need less consultants? And are we spending $300,000 in consultants, but we could have $200,000 in staff and get there? I'm not saying that's the answer. So there was really two parts of the answer. Is there enough staff? Are we using too many consultants?
That is a great clarification. And so, yes, running appropriately can go in either direction. Absolutely there. The other thing you said was, how do we take initiative to involve citizens on boards and tap into their experience? It has the benefit, as the mayor said, of making people feel more engaged, but you're also recognizing there's some pretty well experienced, educated, knowledgeable, resourced people in this community, and their knowledge may also shortcut the way to getting to be smarter and make more intelligent decisions if you have them willing to contribute their time and attention. Those are two pretty powerful things to be able to say, we got to, as a council, we got to figure out how to activate those, how to make that a part of what we're doing. Is there anything else that you want to add to that?
I'd just like to maybe highlight a word that also hasn't come up that oftentimes does with policy boards, and that is everything we've talked about has been, by design, pretty contained. This group, you individually, have we talked at all about partnerships in the community? Aside from volunteering, citizens who might volunteer to serve on boards or commissions, but are there partnership opportunities that have been explored? businesses, school districts, chambers of commerce, organizations, clubs. How closely does the council work with other organizational interests?
I think to a certain degree we already do that because we're already partnered with the superintendent, and I know people on the school board over there. Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. His wife is a school board president. Yeah. And so we already do. We have an awards that we do quarterly or for the teachers to acknowledge them, and they support things that we are doing as well. With regard to the businesses, that's one thing. You talked about the business lunches and breakfasts, and it'd be nice to have a lot more of that going on as well.
There's some other examples. So like with Kiwanis, I would say we're good partners. I mean, they have not only dedicated things to the town over the decades, but they do events here. We do what we can to accommodate them, to let them use our assets. Other organizations come in here and do the same thing, entertain.
Chamber of Commerce. I mean, I think I'm sure there's other things we can all do, but we certainly are engaged as a group, for sure.
So I'm going to, again, just on this one, I'm going to ask green, yellow, red. Green and yellow means we're good to move on from this conversation and we're happy with what we've said. Red means we need to slow down and talk about this a little bit further and whatever you want to do. So what should the town council take the initiative to address, again, beyond the regular responsibilities? Confidence that we are running appropriately lean either way. We need more staff or less, more consultants or less to do that, involving citizens in boards, perhaps paying attention to the opportunity of partnerships. Are we green, yellow, red? Then you should share it.
There's just one thing that I just wanted to address. So this is one that comes up periodically around this time of year, is Thunderbird Arts and Wines and the festivals that go on here. Now that the infill process has really been happening here, and there's not a lot of room, and it's impeding on our business owners. How is that issue, as time goes on, how are we going to address festivals like Thunderbirds? What's going to happen there?
Vince, let me just point out, because it's not in the recording, so and I didn't read these, in the answers to the questions, right, in the answers to the things of what are we over, among the comments here was hosting the Thunderbird Art and Wine Festival is an example of an old mindset. It takes up parking, doesn't much help other local businesses. It's time to think about whether this should remain a community activity. So that's kind of what you're talking about here is, so that's good. Should we take the initiative to address that maybe it's at that festival or others like it,
The role of special events towards achieving our economic development objectives.
There you are. That's a good way of saying it. Anyone want to talk about that?
Well, it's something that we've had more in the past, and we worked through a lot of that. I think that what we currently have is a good blend of events for the community. More of them obviously are during the holiday seasons. But I think what we currently do with the Thunderbirds and so forth, the way I look at it, we do the best we can with what we have. There are limitations, and trying to accommodate everybody is kind of tough. I get it, but it's a 3-day event. We can all bend a little bit.
No, go ahead. Okay. So the appropriate course of action would be to have, since I am not completely familiar with all of the events that we hold, have Steve put together or have a presentation of the event and the impact on the business owners that are, and maybe the community, and maybe this is something in the general plan process where we get feedback from the community on how important that is to them.
So we used to have, I don't know, 30, 40 festivals and events throughout the year. I mean, it was ridiculous. And over time, we cut it back to basically just the 3 Thunderbird events that are 3-day events, and they happen 3 times a year. And one of the reasons we cut all those festivals down was because they were really impeding business to our businesses. And they were taking up all the parking, and people just really started hating them. Thunderbird does generate money for the town. It generates money for the chamber. I think that they serve a purpose. I think that they still bring people to town who maybe would not have come here anyway, and they come here and they don't go to all the shops and restaurants and stuff while they're here because there's too much else happening. But they'll look around and they'll see that maybe they want to come back when the town isn't as crowded. So I think that they still do a good purpose of bringing new people, new faces to the town. And I think that's all I have to say about that.
Yes, regarding Thunderbirds, so there's some issues that arise occasionally, like parking, like streets that are closed in particular places. And so what they have done, to their credit, and if you were out there this last festival, there was probably more security people around than ever before. Arizona Ranger at every gate. I think they did a reasonable job at the post office on the south side. And they have worked with Steve to pull in from streets there was pushback. So at Keeler's, at Styx. So I got an email from Larry at Styx saying how great it was this time because he had a lot of customers and they could, I guess, walk up and park in front of his place. So, but the moral of that story is Thunderbirds is responsive to the pushback. And then if we look back at the other festivals we had before, the quality of the products that were there were marginal. And so we have settled upon, we've gotten rid of all of those to a juried product, which is just outstanding. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better one. But on the other hand, having said all that, we do have to take the temperature occasionally and make sure that the businesses are on board when we're closing the streets, and then at the same time make it as palatable as possible to everyone, citizens and businesses.
All right, I'm going to move our conversation forward because what you've said is things that you want that the council should take initiative to address. Confidence we're running appropriately lean, too much, too little, consultants fine. Involving citizens on boards to tap into their expertise, and the efficacy or the economic impact of special events in the town core. Are we green, yellow? Is this enough here? We cured the red? Okay. Then that moves us to the final question. It's rare and it's precious that the council gets to sit down in this kind of a format. I asked you in the interviews, is there anything else? And I listed those things. But if you look at them, you're going to see a lot of those issues we've already talked about. So my question for you is there anything that's been left unsaid? Anything else that you want to bring to this table to help inform how this council is going to engage with each other, with your community, and with the issues over the course of the rest of the next 2 years? Oh, I've been reminded once again. Anything else? Thank you. This is the time.
Just speaking on a personal note, I think it's important that our legacy as a council is going to be to continue to respect each other's opinions, to conduct ourselves wherever we are. with utmost professionalism and how we treat each other. Even out there when we're talking about my relationship with Steve Hatcher and being as transparent as Steve's a great guy and we get along well because we do, and to remember that and to continue to respect our opinions. That's how I see it, and we get a lot accomplished as a result.
Yeah, there's one takeaway here. I don't know who came up with this, but it doesn't matter who came up with it. But it says council members should be aware that everything we do either increases or diminishes public trust in the local government. So every time we're out there, whether we're just walking around, going to the post office, we're at bashes, people know who we are. So we ought to be on our good behavior all the time.
Always remember we're members of the council 24/7, just like in all of our professions. We have to be acting appropriately at all times.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
So I think for me, what I hope that we accomplish in the next 2 and 4 years is that when a future Carefree Council looks back 20 years from now, they'll say, hey, they left us something to build on. Just like we've been left something to build on. No big gaps, no big holes. They can move it forward with whatever is the nature of what people want in the day.
And with that, Tony, good fiscal management by our town manager, and I think Gary's done a great job and has provided us a good foundation to be able to do the things we need to do for the community, and I want to thank you.
So for me, this is just a professional curiosity. But you live in a fishbowl. It's 24/7. And I know how much money you get paid to doing this. So my question is, it's just you don't have to answer it, but it's a curiosity. How many of you would recommend doing this to another community member who was thinking about it? Would you say it's thankless and it's really hard, or would you say I'd strongly encourage you to consider doing something like this? Just I'm curious about it. You'd say both of them.
Well, it is thankless. No one ever comes up and says thank you for being on the town council. Actually, that's not true. Every now and then someone will thank me for my service. We get a lot of grief. We hear all the criticisms, but I find it very rewarding to be able to give back to my community and make it hopefully a better place to live.
My recommendation would come with an asterisk because it depends on who's asking, and because I've found that over the past 4 years I've become very protective of the institution and of our staff, and not everybody can do this, and people have different intentions, for wanting to do this type of work, and it takes a very selfless individual that's very humble, that is very much behind the scenes, very quiet, and again, not boisterous or anything like that. So it again depends on who it is. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so I would agree with Cheryl. It certainly is not thankless. People thank you all the time, and they may not always express it that way, but they do. And there is an element which, who are maybe more challenging than others, but there's certainly a very small minority. And it takes a lot of time. So if someone asks the question, it takes a lot of time. You'll have to be dedicated. It's almost like 24/7 because you can dedicate as much of your life to it as you want. But it's very rewarding. It's enjoyable. I'd recommend it to anybody if they want to put themselves out there and take a little bit of risk.
Yeah, I would say I would recommend they do it, but go in with your eyes open. And yeah, I've had several citizens come up to me and thank me for my efforts and all that. And I've received a lot of criticism that's not based on any fact, just opinion or misinformation. But I think you have to go into it with the right mindset and ask yourself, why are you doing it? And if you're doing it because you love Carefree and you want to just learn and make it better and serve your community, absolutely do it. If you think you're going to go on to some higher public office or get some sweet consulting gig in politics after you're done, nobody's ever done that in Carefree, so don't do it.
The financial center of the world.
I think the way to summarize it, if you're the type of person that likes power, you shouldn't be here.
Any other comments? This is still the anything else thing. Anyone other comments you want to make before we call this a wrap? Then I will just say on behalf of John and myself, thank you for the privilege to be able to talk to you individually, for you taking the time to share with us, also for the privilege of just openness with each other and for the nature of this conversation. I think you appreciate it, but it shouldn't go unspoken. Not every community can have this kind of a conversation. And the fact that in Carefree you can, and you do, is a special thing. And we just want to wish you well. That we hope that this conversation serves you over the course of your term in office. And go forth and prosper. There you are.
Thank you, Matt. John,
Thank
good
you
job.
very much. All right.
Matt and John, thank you very much. That was just a great exercise. And it was great for us to all talk